and today is Friday, December 22nd, 2023. And just like everyone else said, as you're going into the holy days, however you celebrate, we hope that you're blessed and have a joyful gathering. And we are here if, the holy days brings up something, within you, some issues from your past, or, that maybe there's dread or something. We're here to support you. Today will be, the last day before Christmas. We'll be back on Monday. We're planning on being live every day next week, as long as Blog Talk allows us in. And yes, Dr. Tim, I will play your recordings. Be sure and send me the list. And Michael has joined us, and so I'm going to first say welcome, Michael, and then let you know that I did get a email from someone with a question. So whenever you're ready for that. So welcome.
Cool, sweet. Well, welcome everybody. Delighted that you're here. Glad that we've finally got into the show. The first 10 minutes or so we couldn't get in, so I guess they're still having some difficulties at Blog Talk, but hopefully they'll get those worked out quickly, and we'll be solidly back in place. And if you've got a question, Jeanie, let's just go for that right off the bat. Let's do it.
Okay. She goes by the name of Alexi. She used to be Danielle, and she says, "Hey guys, I love your work. I'm always sharing it as often as possible. We met back in Vegas in 2010 before I had my son Hayden in 2011. I was going over your Power Person worksheet and love it. No, so true how we go back and resist our Power Person when we're under stress. So mine was my mom. She died when I was 18 after a long battle with cancer. When I date a man who is older than me," I'm going to mute a couple people. We're getting some feedback here. "When I date a man who is older than me, I revert back to the stress coping mechanism I had with my mom, which was to run away, to avoid, or to walk on eggshells, self-efface, and fawn. I did quite a lot of work on this, and I felt that my adult self came in to show my mom was no longer my power person, that she has gone and I'm the adult now. I'm the mom. I had a strong wave of love come in for my mom and saw that she was doing her best. I felt love for her again, which I hadn't in a long time. And I felt that I had released her as my power person. I dismantled the idea that she even was my power person. I also did the pineal gland energy work that Michael does with the 2 pencils. I felt a big release. Is there anything else that you can recommend? As you know, I have been doing this work with you and the forgiveness worksheets since 2010, so perhaps this pattern with my partner will soften as I keep practicing this Power Person worksheet. Thank you for any advice."
Awesome. Well, delighted that you've been on board for that long and holding the space. It'd be cool to have you call into the show if you get a chance and just share a little bit more about what your experience has been. And it sounds like you've really effectively been using the tool, so congratulations on that. My offering would be is what I hear is the possibility that what you're dealing with is a multi-generational pattern, not just something that went on between you and mom. Very likely something that's been building. And when you look at this whole power person dynamic, the behaviors involved, the 3 different levels of behavior and such, what we're looking at is a deeply embedded energy that is made up of an extremely complex, looking for the right word, structure of thought disorders. And when those are passed on from generation to generation and nobody has the tools for cleaning them up, then energetically they tend to be reinforced. And as you build to each new level of vitality, that's why, for instance, when we do an intensive, we do a total fresh and raw food program, because one of the most common drugs on planet Earth is food, or should I say the pretense of eating food, like sodas and alcohol and processed foods. I mean, they call them foods, but they're not foods. Right down to the point where something I've realized in just the last few years since we've been doing a lot of gardening here in Virginia is that you can't grow food on dirt. You've got to have soil. And most commercial food, the first thing that they do is they spray 10 gallons per acre, as I understand it, of glyphosate or similar killer product, chemical, to make sure that everything in the soil is dead, which means it's no longer soil, it's dirt. And then they plant a seed and try to get life out of death, which doesn't make any sense. So as you discard all of the drugs of the culture, and the more common ones aside from food and alcohol and legal and illegal drugs are things like hostility. And so as you vitalize yourself, the next layer, the next healing opportunity is going to surface. You know, if you go back to Yeshua, they made a similar comment, if we kind of extend it in our imagination, and that was, they said, well, you know, I have this brother, how many times do I need to forgive him? Is forgiving, the way the Greeks translate it, is forgiving him 7 times enough? Well, in Aramaic, that phrase would have been, how many times should I forgive as to my brother is 7 times enough? In other words, am I going to be finished with this multi-generational pattern of trauma if I do 7 worksheets? In Aramaic, he said 77 times 70 worksheets. And my take on that, you know, I don't think the disciples were sitting there going, let's see, 7 sevens, 49 carries 40. It wasn't about a literal number. The 7 is a number of completion, and 0 was infinity. We will each do an infinite amount of work until completion of whatever that particular dynamic is. And, you know, the power person dynamic is so pervasive that my take is it literally runs the world. And as far as I know, I've never found anything comparable to the power person dynamic, aside from, you can go back into the scriptural quote that says, look to the lives of the fathers, for ours are but a shadow of theirs upon the earth. Ideas like that. But in really understanding what forms the power person dynamic in a child's mind, and again, it's usually a child. It can happen to an adult as well. It's usually a child and a parent, but not always. And we can have different power persons around different issues. And the way you tell who your key power person is around any given issue is you look at when extra stressed, ultra stressed, whose behavior do I do? That will point me to who the power person is in this particular circumstance. And so my take is use every tool you've got, all of the above, and continue to do your work. You know, if I look at my own process, I've been developing this work for over 50 years now. And for me, the most important, the deepest levels and layers of work have been done in just the last 2 or 3 years. So it's a process. It's an unfolding process. I would definitely be very committed to the forgiveness, the reality management worksheet process. I don't know if you've got, you know, we've got a 1-page power person worksheet. I don't believe you've done the codependence-to-interdependence intensive. And therefore, we actually, in the second, we did 2 back-to-back online Zoom codependence-to-interdependence communication practicum workshops. And in that workshop, though I've been teaching the codependence work for about 25 years, the Power Person worksheet had always been a single page. As a result of that intensive, actually the second time around, what should I say, just the press of doing those two intensives back to back opened the space, and we actually expanded the second codependence intensive from 14 weeks to 17 weeks because a totally new Power Person worksheet came out of that workshop. It's now 14 pages long. We don't put it out there because it's kind of like hand in hand with the intensive. If you don't have the intensive, then it's just, you don't have the brain cells to do it. So one of the things you might want to look at doing is picking up and doing the codependence-to-interdependence communication practicum self-study. It's the two intensives we put together, there's a total of almost 90 hours of video, and we cover why is this happening to me again, healing through relationships, communication, did you hear what I think I said, mind shifters, and still point breathing. That's the focal point of those 90 hours, and it has literally all of the teaching, all of the question and answers, all of the processing of two full intensives in a 90-hour video self-study. That intensive includes two personal code evaluations, one at the beginning, so you can get a sense of where are the major challenges in the mind. The personal code evaluation breaks our personal code down into 10 different areas so that you can take a look at where are my weaknesses, where are the blind spots in my mind, and the personal code evaluation gives you those very specifically, and then gives very specific tools for dealing with those challenges. And then at the end of the intensive, you do another personal code evaluation so that by looking at your comparative scores, you can see what the effectiveness has been of your work and what your new challenges are as you complete the intensive. And of course, once you've purchased the intensive, it's yours forever. So it's something that I suggest people go back and revisit because, well, let's see. I've probably taught the codependence-to-interdependence workshop, oh boy, I don't know, 50 times over the years. And I've done the codependence-to-interdependence intensive 20 or 25 times. And it wasn't until the second online Zoom intensive that new worksheet developed, that the brain cells became strongly enough established in me for me to comprehend it and to extend out this tool for unraveling the power person dynamic. So, it takes a pretty intense interaction and the building of brain cells to just so that the mind can give us new levels of comprehension of what it is that we're working with. So I might suggest you might want to do that, and we've set the cost so it's minimal. The whole program is $600. The 90 hours of video, personal code evaluations. There are 2 additional videos that will explain the personal code evaluation to you, and then 5 days a week with the radio show. We're here to support people who are doing that intensive on their own with personal support and questions and answers. So that might be a place to step forward, and if you're interested in doing that, you might drop Jeanie an email at Jeanie, Jeanie at whyagain.org. Other options I would offer is calling to the show live. Let's have a conversation, and maybe Jeanie and I can support you, tap in, and see how we can support you moving forward. And or you might want to go ahead and set up a personal session with either Jeanie or myself, and we can see if we can help to crack whatever the last vestiges of that are for you. But it wouldn't surprise me, it would be unusual if the dynamics of that power person interaction were established strictly between you and your mother, that's where it started. Because, of course, your mom had a power person who had a power person who had a power person who had a power person. And chances are that you very possibly, on the other end of it, the other place I'd suggest you go is to look at the dynamics between yourself and your son, because chances are you are your son's power person. It's not something that people do consciously to their child. In fact, people consciously attempt to avoid it when they become aware of it, but that doesn't resolve the issues, the core energetic patterns. When you look at how massive a database this multi-generational database we call a body-mind unit is, my offering is there is no computer on earth. In fact, if we took all of the world's giant Cray computers and wired them all together, we would not have the capacity of one single human form in terms of its storage capacity, its intelligence, and its capability. So that would be my take, that you maybe take the same worksheets that you've done perhaps on mom, perhaps on your partner, that you also do some of that work around your son. Another place to go with it is in some of those situations where you see the interaction with mom reflected today, is that you go back and you do the same worksheets you've been doing, only you do them as though you were your mother. You did a power person worksheet on mom when, event A happened. And you did it from your perspective as the child involved in that interaction, or as the adult who was in that relationship with mom as a child. So do the same worksheet, only do it as though you're mom. You put your hat on, you actually ask mom for permission, 1, and 2, to breathe into her field and to be able to see the world through the perceptual constructs of her mind. And do the same worksheet, and you may find another level of insight. So they'd be my best inputs for how to move forward and get through the other side of this one. The other part of that intensive is responsibility communication. And if you've got a partner that this power person dynamic, circles around with, then utilizing the responsibility communication tool will also be powerful in relationship with your partner. The instruction set for the communication workshop, communication, did you hear what I think I said, for 3 decades was a 1-page sheet. And actually I express often my deep gratitude for the fact that Magda had touched into the communication worksheet, responsibility communication tool, way back when she was at Heartland on the support team, and it was, as I understood it, her favorite tool, and she used it, and she used it, and she used it. And then in the online Zoom intensive, she was the volunteer, along with Chuck, to do the responsibility communication. And because of her engagement, nobody gets to the refined places of these tools without really serious engagement. And Magda had been engaging in it very seriously for several years. I had been engaging in it for 7 years, and it was still a 1-page worksheet until that intensive. And as a result of the interaction, the instructions now that go hand in hand with the responsibility communication tool is a very intense, filled 3 pages of information, where for 25 years it was 1 page. And so that's kind of, anyone who's ready to really unwind their minds and take their work to the next level, engaging on that level is what it takes. It's the process of building the brain cells and developing the ability to formulate higher and higher and higher levels perceptual constructs until you can realize that the ultimate solution is to be out of your mind and get rid of those perceptual constructs altogether. And that's something that for the average person would make no sense whatsoever to say that to them. But literally, as I'll oftentimes tongue-in-cheek say, in order to heal, you've got to be out of your mind. And ultimately, that's what the tools are about. So I hope that's helpful. And if you have any, personal questions, please create this. You're certainly welcome to write back, or it works better because I've got the intuitive connection. Jeanie has that. Both of us have. That's a skill we've practiced for many years, and can tap in more easily with a personal. Hearing your actual voice, your actual vibration, is something that helps us to tap in, and maybe it will help us to support you on an even deeper level. So. Hope that fits and works for you, and we'll be holding the space. Any thoughts to add to that, Jeanie?
No, you covered it real well, and I've taken all those notes, and then I'm going to send her a copy of the listen or download today's show, and then also send her some of the worksheets that you mentioned. So.
Cool.
Awesome. I do have a question though.
Yes.
Because she says, that she released her mother from being her power person, and that she dismantled the idea that she was even her power person. Is that possible? I know that you can do work enough to get past it ruling you or directing your choices or decisions, but can you totally dismantle that?
I believe, yes, I would say so. Because all it is, all the power person dynamic is a compilation of thought disorders. And, you knock one out at a time, two out at a time, you get rid of a third one, you get rid of a fourth one, and each layer, and once that's knocked down, then that's going to disappear. The mind will not have a foundation from which to build that reflection that we call the power person dynamic. That would be my take. That would be my best understanding of it anyway. And of course, ultimately to do that, you'd be reaching back generation upon generation upon generation and cleaning up the power person interactions and the leftover thought disorders of those generations. Now, I had shared, we shared this a couple times on the show, but what comes to mind as an example, we have a young man who's a medical professional who had done the codependence intensive. This goes back last year. And his scores on his personal code evaluation are like gangbusters, like the kind of stuff that a person who knows how to read an evaluation like the personal code evaluation would say, well, that's almost impossible. And then it was about 3 months down the road when he wrote me a note, and he, continued to do his work, and had my take would be that he came to a whole new level of vitality, a whole new level of empowerment, and he actually had memories of his father, whose mother was a Nazi nurse in Germany and a prostitute, and had totally, basically ignored his father, and he had memories of his father drinking out of mud puddles and climbing up on bar stools as a small child to get a hold of alcohol, and had those memories surface. They're the kind of things that ultimately have to be resolved, have to come forward in the presence of active love in order to eradicate that power person dynamic. That would be my take. But when you do your work, often you'll go to that level of awareness that where without the awareness, one can process through some of those dynamics energetically, but it takes a deep level of committed work to get to the point where those energetic patterns would become cognitive, would move to the level where I can really decode what this energy is moving in me, and here's this memory of what happened to my father. Here's this memory of my father being an abusive alcoholic with my brother, and my brother going into a psychotic state. This was one of the memories that he shared, went into such a psychotic state that he never came out of it, and had to process the trauma of that. So yes, my take would be it can be eradicated totally, and it might take several generations. It would certainly take someone with a super high level of commitment. Does that fit, sweetie?
Yep, that's good. I haven't gotten complete with mine yet.
Well, layer by layer. The scriptures talk about strength to strength, here a little, there a little. With stammering ears will we listen to the Creator's direction, because we speak in a tongue other than love. And as we drop the language based in hostility or fear and literally build brain cells that are keyed only to love, then we're going to, I think, find ourselves more and more in resonance with the Creator's mind, which was what was called the mind of Christ in us. Nothing religious about that, just that we're designed to live out of that mind of love. And, it's a process. I pulled, let's see, over the years, I've maybe observed 5 to 10 people who've gotten to the level in their work where they've really been able to deeply confront the power person dynamic in themselves. And I don't know of anyone who has totally resolved it, and I'll include myself in that. It is a process. And the fact that, we're the first generation. I wish I were, it would be sweet to be in Arya's place where she's the second generation of engaging in this understanding in this work and having the brain cells built from day one for her in terms of this work, rather than built out of the power person dynamics of the generation. Of course, she has the influence of that power person dynamic with her parents, and to some degree has had that somewhat with us, but still has been building the brain cells from day one for living truly as that presence of love in the world. And, she'll go 1,000 miles further than either of us probably in terms of doing her work, and have children who will go still farther, until we get to the point where the hostility and fear-based mind is just gone. This is, can't even be imagined. That's what I hold the space for the day that happens.
Yeah, we do have a hand up.
Okay, one other thought I wanted to throw in, when you said you had a question, we got this question just so if there's anybody new on the show that's not aware of it, we do have the world's only forgiveness app. If you go to your app store and type in Heartland, Heartland, one word, Aramaic forgiveness, one of the first apps that will come up, there'll be a few that will show up, but there will be one with a red glowing heart, and that's our app. You can download that app. It's free. It's designed specifically and purposely to be very private. It only asks for one permission, and that is permission to use the internet, unless you choose to print a worksheet once you've completed it, and then it asks for permission to save that worksheet to your hard drive. But otherwise, we have no permissions. It's designed to be secure, totally, completely secure, and totally, completely private. And from within the app, on every page in the app, Jeanie set it up so that if you have a question, if there's something you're not understanding about what's going on this page, you can just click a button, write your question, hit send. Jeanie will get it. She'll read it as she did today's question, and we'll answer it. That'll be our first topical conversation. So know that that's available to you through the Heartland Aramaic Forgiveness app. So let's talk to whoever's got their hand up.
Okay. I don't recognize this number, so I can't introduce them by name, but 970, you're on the air. Who do we have?
Hey, Michael and Jeanie, it's Carrie.
And Marek.
Hey there, young lady. Welcome. Hey, Marek.
And
Welcome.
young man.
Gracias. Appreciate that.
We were
So,
sitting there listening, and I thought, oh, I forgot to push the one to get in the queue. So here we are.
Awesome.
Great talk on the power person dynamic, as always. We enjoyed it.
Yes, lots of sparks going off.
Nice. Awesome. Yeah, that my take is, if you look, I don't care whether it's churches, businesses, governments, families, communities, it's all run by the power person dynamic. When people are ultra stressed, I didn't get into the behavior aspect of it, but basically, and seeing as how we've talked so much about it, we can just add a little bit to the understanding of it, and that is that this power person dynamic is something that, again, usually happens between a parent and a child, and there are three things that happen to instill a power person dynamic in a child's mind. One, the parent, and again, it's usually a parent, has more power over the child than the child has. Two, that parent is not functioning as a human being, is not functioning out of love. And three, the child perceives the circumstance as survival. When that happens, when you think of the child's body-mind unit as an energy system, the energy system is just laid wide open and becomes a sponge and literally absorbs every energy in the environment, whether those energies are spoken or expressed. The power person perhaps never says a word or turns their face away when they're in rage, but the child absorbs the energy of the rage. Once their field opens, it's absorbed. And that energy, once it's instilled in the child, will literally run, as long as that person is living out of their perceptual minds, will run every behavior for the rest of their lives. They will only be able to do behaviors based in that power person dynamic. And the three behaviors, there are only three behaviors that they will be able to do, again, as long as they're being run by perception and until those dynamics are resolved. And the thing that determines which behavior they're going to be controlled by, there's this thing in the mind we call the automatic decision system, and it will kick in. And even though somebody says, well, I'm never going to do that again, under the right level of stress, the automatic decision system kicks in, and there we are doing it again. How many people have you heard say, boy, I'm never going to be like my father or my mother? Well, that's a great idea, but if I never go in and clean the power person dynamic up under stress, that's what's going to run my mind. So when there's the three levels of behavior are determined by what level of stress we're under. So when there's little or no stress, people will do whatever they did. The automatic decision system will kick in and have them do whatever they did to get along with their power person. When stress starts to build, decision system will kick in to forcing them to do whatever they did to resist and survive with their power person. And then when they become ultra stressed, they'll do what their power person did to them that they hated the most. And my offering is that's literally what runs the world. And as far as I know, that block of information has never been available on the planet before. And so we've got a worksheet for that. We've got an app for that. So what's on your minds today? And it's nice to hear your voice. It's good. I've been looking forward to having a conversation with you. Are you there? Hello?
Hello?
Okay, you're back.
No,
I lost you there for a moment.
Yeah.
That was our technical issue.
Yeah, but we're here.
Okay. Welcome back.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I don't. Do you want to mention about what you watched in the video? One of the things that you were bringing up for me is last week I called in the hour earlier and I talked with Dr. Tim about some young people that I have doing some work for me in the Philippines, and one has an issue of not showing up and not communicating, and we kind of went into, when in my life did I not show up, and so that was a really interesting, definitely tied into my power person dynamic with my dad and the frustrations that have come up with that, and doing a bunch of worksheets and working on it to clear it from my own system. Of course, it's not 100% clear yet, but I still feel like I have to do something with this person, which is not continue having them not show up for me. It's been very difficult. So it's interesting to balance. Go ahead, yeah.
Notice that, one of the things, if we listen to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, he says, the power of life and death is in our words. And my take is the reason the power of life and death is in our words is because our words reflect the frequencies with which we're creating our lives. And one of the things that inhibits resolving an issue is that we haven't freed the mind of the frequency of the issue deeply enough yet to be able to go to the solution side of the equation. So the conversation is about the problem rather than, well, I haven't come to the point, or I'm ready for my intuition to show me how I can resolve this if there's any last vestige of this energy in me, and how I can resolve it with this person so they feel good about themselves and they feel great about showing up, and they show up and they're reliable and become one of the most reliable people in the world. When my mind automatically goes to that side of the conversation, I'm halfway to having resolved the issue in the world externally. But until I can conceive of that, I'm not likely going to be able to resolve that issue.
Right. We've been through a few iterations of that.
I hear you. Been there, done that.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more of it still in me. And
well, it's all in me. It's all me.
Well, my take.
There's a lot of playing the same old tape instead of going to the new side, the solution side, and I can see that occurring as well.
And when I can collapse the, and this is the purpose of the forgiveness process, a la first century Aramaic, is when I can collapse deeply enough into the structures in my mind with which I construct the perception of them as responsible for my disturbance. Then I've freed myself of that disturbance, and that's when I can enter into the next level of that process. And that's where the responsibility communication tool comes in. And where most people communicate, no, let me back up a bit. Virtually everybody in the world believes that they have a set of eyes that they look out through and see what's happening in the world. And they really believe that that's what's taking place. I mean, the whole world believes that. And my offering is that's one of the biggest. Say again?
Yes, that's how it works, but it's not.
Right.
According to your teachings, that's all. It's not that way at all.
Exactly. My brain generates a picture that it paints on the inside of my eyeballs, and I think seeing as how it's on the inside of my eyeballs, it's actually out there, when the truth is it's not out there. As long as I have a perceptual construct in my mind, it first and foremost informs me about what's going on in my mind. And most people use what in that workshop I call projection communication. And projection communication looks like I have a reality in my mind, a picture of you, and here's the way you are. And I use words that try to convince you to believe that what's painted on the inside of my balls is true about you instead of being true about me. And moving into responsibility communication is where I start to use words that reflect my awareness that the picture that I'm looking at is mine, about me, and painted on the inside of my eyeballs. And I communicate about it in such a way with the person who brings that up for me, the person who resonates that. I communicate it in such a way that I can intact transfer to them an understanding of my reality and that it is mine, and I enlist support for the healing of that reality, because the person who can resonate it for me, you know, it's kind of like in nature, wherever there's poison ivy, there's the antidote to the poison ivy within a few feet of that poison ivy. And the person who can resonate something in me is the person who carries the salve for my wound. If I can move out of the projection into responsibility communication and really invite them into the space with me, trusting that they hold the solution and the energy that will bring me healing.
And
that's
one way of knowing that energy is shifted is that I'm no longer triggered. The person can still continue in their behavior, but I'm no longer triggered. And then I'll be behaving differently.
Well, actually, you remind me of something that I find, it's a little bit on the humorous side in the Course in Miracles, that kind of it's a test for telling where you are in your process. And it's a two-tier test. And the first level of the test is the one that you just expressed. When I think of anyone, am I in a state of perfect peace? That's the first level of the test. And that's the easy level of the test. The second level of the test is, when they think of me, do they share my perfect peace? Then I know I've really processed through the issue. And that's a whole other level of doing your work. And say it again?
What was the first part of it?
The first part is, you know, let's say with this situation you talk about, this person in the Philippines, when I think of them, am I at perfect peace? So that's the first level of the test. I know I'm really on track. I'm doing some good work. And then, am I complete with the issue? When they think of me, do they share my perfect peace? And I would add another part to it, and that is, when my power person that I established this dynamic with thinks of me, do they share my perfect peace? Then I know I've really come through it, because, in fact, you know, if we listen to Einstein says, on such things as matter, we've been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy. Energy whose vibrations have been so lowered as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter. And if you think you're separate or separated from the rest of humanity, you're living in an optical delusion. The truth is, there's only one of us. You know, and that's a long way from the way our perceptual minds separate us out and make us believe and look like, you know, there are others spread all over the place, but ultimately coming to that place of connectedness and oneness means we've done one horrendously deep piece of work.
Right.
Not proclaiming I've done that level of work yet.
And that's the whole point of this hologram, isn't it? Is to experience the non-love and to master the walk back to love.
That would be my take, that we actually experience ourselves as that presence of love. Not that we love anybody or not that anybody loves us. That's a totally false goal that leads us off track. People waste lifetimes trying to achieve that one, but rather to come to the point where I get to experience myself as in my own physiology, as the presence of love, that my own physiology is a clean and clear enough space that there's nothing that conflicts with the presence of love that I am in my physiology, and therefore I can bring that full presence of love into my physiology, incarnate in the world, and extend it out to the world.
Beautiful. I love the Why Again workshop from June 11, 2022, and the whole first part of drawing on the board and the number of times I've been through it. I appreciate what you were saying earlier about building the brain cells, building the layers in the gray matter, getting those pathways myelinated. And as you're speaking today, I can see the drawing on the board of the disassociative side and the build-up side, and seeing all these things makes a big difference to understanding what you're saying now. Because earlier at the beginning, it was like gobbledygook. I couldn't get it, and so I feel my frequency raising enough to begin to comprehend what you're talking about, and then to be able to catch it and observe it in my own life is the trick. And even seeing myself reacting or triggered and not knowing what it's from, and then shifting from I don't know to what is it, and that leads me to the show me, and then little things start bleeding through. But what a journey.
Yeah, here's my next worksheet.
I love the layers, and I have the feeling that it just doesn't ever stop. It's just keep more of the same, but stay conscious, stay loving, stay kind.
Accurate. Yeah, that would be it exactly. And then, just throw out a thought, and this is one that's just been falling in place for me maybe the last year to 2 years. As I was saying, the deepest parts of my own work I've done in just the last couple of years. But to get to the point, and this has been my request now for better than a year, is to surrender perception totally, to live without perception, and to live without memory.
Wow.
Wow, yeah. And so alternatively, what is the focus?
Well, that's where you shift trust from carbon-based memory, which stores information which can be very useful from the past, but everything that it shows is always a reflection of the past. That's all memory can do. That's all perception can do, is reflect what's there. It's the replicate mind, as we talked about in that Why workshop. It just replicates what's gone on in the past. And we've come to trust it because I need this piece of information, I need that. And to be willing to let go of perception and memory, and then trust that the mind of the Creator is in you, that has everything you need, to really rely on that mind rather than on carbon-based memory.
So then the focus is on the present Christ mind?
Yes.
I'm thinking of, I'm not doing that, then what am I wanting to be doing? That's what I'm searching for here.
Yeah. Well, my take is that you've collapsed carbon-based memory and the past mind sufficiently that you've experienced and observed that there is another mind that's available to you and is reliable and trustworthy, and that you can trust it, and you don't have to go back to the survival mind again. Like you've given up the trust in the survival mind.
And so I'm finding intuition in this space that you're speaking of, on track with intuition.
Yes.
My gut feelings, my body, these first, the first thing that comes up, that place.
Intuition becomes, well, not necessarily the first thing that comes up. Sometimes there's an unresolved issue in your gut that's going to, pop up and make such a noise. It's going to appear like the truth and the only thing that's there. And by its fruit, its hostility and fear, you'll know there's another piece of work to do. But intuition, inner tutor, the inner guide, and that's where we're designed to live, move, and have our being. And then through those higher faculties, the spiritual faculties, then we get to reach into the actuality rather than, if we think of perception, I'm in a room right now where there's a ceiling fan with a light and a pull chain, and there's a TV, and there's a mask over there, and there's a mirror over there, and there's some art on the wall, and there's a phone sitting here beside me. So if I were a fly looking at that, would I say mask, TV, pull chain, phone? No. If there was some infrared energy in the room, I'd go for it, and it'd be food. But that's what my perceptual system would serve up to me. If I were a mosquito, if I were a mouse, do I look up and see a TV and see a guy's face on, I've got a picture on the screen that's on hold. Would I look up as a mouse and see a face on the screen? No. I don't think the mouse's mental construct would be quite that. I mean, it's, maybe its sense of smell is enough to go, oh, there's a crumb of cheese over there, but it sure doesn't see the guy on the screen, nor the fact that he's got a receding hairline. It wouldn't mean anything to him. And I think that ultimately what we're designed as human beings to do would be the level at which the highest human today perceives and conceives would be to the truth as the flea's perception or the fly's perception is of what's going on in this room right now. That we're designed for far, far, far more than what we're letting in right now with our survival and our hostility and our fear and our wants and our desires and what we think is important.
Right. Man, that impresses on me that I have a longer way to go than I even thought. But it's all
Don't
good
we
because
all?
I'm in joy now. I'm in joy and
Sweet.
And I'm here.
That's one of the signals we're on track, I think, is when that joy shows up. Something that's inspired me recently, this new telescope that they've got that's seeing into space, like, the Big Bang is now gone. Science knows that was a fallacy. It's more, claptrap, more perceptual stuff. I believe that what this telescope is now starting to cue us into is telling us what we're capable of ultimately when we really function out of our true being. That we're designed to function within that whole structure, comprehend it, and who knows what comes next with that.
The culmination of who we are coming together. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah. And when we do that, and when we do that in the community, when we as cells in this individual body, my take is, in the ancient teachings when they talked about, the mind of Christ, the body of Christ, the mystical body of Christ, we are cells in what they were trying to express when they talked about the mystical body of Christ. And when we stop living for self, we stop living in this self, me, and everything perceived is about, what I need to get, then I'm starting to function as that cosmic being that I'm designed to function as. And like, who knows what comes next when we get there.
No kidding. So my walk as a master, initially I understood was in service to others, but I'm closer now to the idea that if I'm seeing everybody as myself and as the one, then that's the service that I'm in. So it goes from beyond me to all, as me.
As you, yeah. That would be my take. That's where we're heading. And my take on that is, you know, I may be totally all wet, and that might be just a load of crap.
Right?
But
That's right.
accepting that and going for that will be a whole lot more enlivening and a whole lot more fun than the garbage that, oh, we have to decide who's going to win the next, you know, political office, or who's going to get the next handout, or who's going to make the biggest bucks. It'll be a whole lot healthier than anything that exists in that realm, even if it's all wet.
Yes, totally support that. It makes me feel better to feel that way. And that's the path I'm on.
Sweet.
I'm doing men's work, MKP, and in the circles, man, I'm seeing a lot of me. That's all I'm getting. The whole key to everything is that it's all me. It's all coming from me. And as I help myself, I help others.
Several months ago, you know, my granddaughter's now 5. Several months ago, it's actually about a year ago now, I guess. So she was about 4 at the time. And early, when she was maybe 2, she swallowed a button. And explained to her why we were checking her bowel movements, looking for the button. I pulled out some anatomy and physiology cards, and she became just enamored. I mean, she would sit for hours and watch videos on YouTube on anatomy and physiology. And about a year ago, we had bought her a skeleton puzzle where you can put take the muscles on, you know, take the stomach out and take all the organs out, take the covering of the torso out, take all the organs out, put them back in. She knows where the heart goes, where the liver goes, what the pancreas does. You know, she's got all that. And one day we were working on it and she said, Papa, I want to watch a video on the body. And I said, okay. So I come in, we turn on YouTube and go to the Kids Learning Tube, and there's a cartoon, kids cartoon on anatomy and physiology, and they have an outline of a human form, like almost like a stick figure, and inside of the stick figure, inside of the outline of the human form, are all the organs of the body. And so they start with some music, and all of the organs fall out onto the ground or onto the floor in order of size, the smallest to the largest, and each organ in turn sings to you as to what its purpose is, what it does. And when it comes to the eyes, you know, they rise up, they're next to sing, and they start to sing, and they sing, I am your eyes, I am your eyes, I see the world around you. And Ari turns to me and says, they don't understand, do they, Papa? We see with our brain, not with our eyes.
Whoa.
When we realize we've never seen anything ever in our lives, we can't see anything with our eyes. It's not physiologically possible. The eye is a one-way energy antenna that lets light in. Information's carried on light, and according to what's in us, resonated by that light, our mind generates the world we think we see outside of us. Again, perception.
Yes, well, we think we see.
We think we see. So the collapsing of perception, you know, the fact that this genius 2,000 years ago said, here's how you collapse the false world. It's called forgiveness. It's driven by goals. You cancel a goal, it collapses. In that moment, you get to taste actual life, what we're really here for. And when we do the work of developing that, everything moves forward. And as I say, who knows where it all ends up, but it sure is a sweet ride. And I'm delighted to be sharing it with you guys.
Yes, I love it about your granddaughter. What a great head start she has. And when I first came across the collapsing of the goals, I had this huge, what do you call it when the mind can't handle the belief? It just stopped me in my tracks. What do you mean cancel?
Healing crisis.
I thought my goals were good. No, it's the the dissonance.
Yeah, and the goals are good. There's no, the idea of the forgiveness process is you don't cancel a goal because there's something wrong with the goal. You cancel the goal because you recognize when you load it in your mind, it triggers into activity some form of hostility or fear that you need to resolve. That underlies the perceptual construct your mind's serving up to. So when you cancel the goal, that construct collapses. When it collapses in on itself, you now have access to the root energy that's behind it that maybe goes back to 2 days ago or 2 months ago or when you were 2 or 2,000 years ago. It goes back to that root energy. And in love, you get to process through it.
Yes. And it's usually, most of these go back to when I was a kid, pre-5 kind of stuff.
Yep.
And
yeah,
but the place I found myself,